Welcome to Three Thoughts On. This is Rafael, and today my guest is Sophie Storm Roberts. Sophie is an adventure athlete, mindset coach, motivational speaker, digital creator, and personal trainer. But that wasn't always the case. At 27 years old, she was running the commercial division of the UK's fastest growing technology startup. She had everything society told her she should need to feel happy. But she couldn't help feeling, is this really it? So in January 2013, she quit her job and endeavored to create a new story. Today, her life has completely changed and is filled with energy and a desire to give back. Her biggest passion is helping girls build confidence and courage. So she founded TrailBlazers to help girls develop the tools and communities to navigate the world and rise from the mental health epidemic we are in. Sophie will tell you she is an ordinary woman with big dreams and a huge drive to make them happen. After spending some time with her here in Lake Nona a few weeks ago, I can tell you that she does carry herself with genuine humility and grace. However, I assure you she is far from ordinary. Her story is one of resilience and drive, and she is a true inspiration to young girls everywhere. I enjoyed this conversation, and I am confident you will love it as well. And now, Sophie Storm Roberts. Welcome to Three Thoughts On. Today I have a very special guest. I have Sophie Storm Roberts. Sophie, how are you today?
Brilliant, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, Sophie and I met a couple of weeks ago here at an event in Lake Nona, and I am so happy we did because she's a fascinating human being. And we're going to talk about a lot of interesting things today related to resilience. But before we get started, Sophie, why don't you take a few minutes and just give us a little bit of background on who you are and how did you get to the point of living such an exciting life?
Well, thank you for that intro. Let's see. So for me, it all started when I graduated from university, and I felt like my whole life was gearing me up, as I'm sure many people do, to fulfilling your potential, to being able to go and do something of impact in the world, to create a fulfilling life that brings happiness and success and all of these things. And actually, I ended up in a job that was so far from what I thought I was going to be able to do. I ended up doing sales for a tech startup in London, and I thought, okay, this isn't my dream job, but I'm going to throw myself into it. But within 6 months of being there, I very quickly realized this isn't the place I'm going to find the answers to the burning questions that I have, which are, who am I? What's my potential? What was I put on this planet to do? I was early 20s and I really wanted to explore the answers to those questions. And at the same time, I found the whole sort of corporate environment that I was in and the structure of it very limiting and very much like, you need to tick all these boxes. And I had all these aspirations and dreams for myself, but they felt a million miles away because I had to go by the rules. And everyone was like, oh, you don't like your job? Well, no one likes their job. That's why we all meet in the pub after work and we have a few beers and we forget about it and we just get on with it. That's what we all do. But that whole settling for something that felt so far away from what I truly believed I was capable of doing and what I really, wanted to do with my life just didn't sit with me. So I stayed with the job and I thought, I'm going to take this into my own hands. And I turned to the world of adventure and mountains and the outdoors because that to me seemed a place that was limitless. And what I found was that there, when I started to challenge myself, I started to set myself these adventures and physical endurance challenges, that there were no limitations. There was no, I could climb the highest mountain or dream up the biggest thing I could possibly think of. And the only one that was going to make it happen was me, and no one was going to stand in my way either. So the first challenge that I set myself was an adventure race in the jungle of Borneo. And I went out to Borneo with 40 people that I'd never met before. And we did all kinds of adventure racing. And it was just the most phenomenal experience. And it culminated with this climb up Mount Kinabalu, which is the highest mountain in Southeast Asia. And we were standing on top of this mountain at sunrise, and this was also the first holiday that I'd taken from my job. So first of all, I thought it's pretty cool that you get paid to go on holiday. And also I'd earned a bonus for my sales job, which I also thought was really cool, because I was like, I always worked hard in my life anyway. And now someone was paying me extra money to do a good job. So I was like, great. And now here I am standing on the summit of this mountain in Borneo. And it was just this huge light bulb moment for me. And it was like, okay, this is how I'm going to become the person that I want to become. And you mentioned at the start talking about resilience. And for me, I always had this desire, like, I want to be confident in who I am. I want to be brave in how I live my life. I want to be resilient against the storms that life sends us. And until this point, I hadn't figured out how I was going to become that person. And so that started this whole journey, which has now become my life and my brand, my purpose, my mission, Challenge Sophie. And for quite a few years, I was exploring this in my job, and I was going from kind of strength to strength. I was part of the growth team of the UK's fastest growing tech startup at the time, running a division of 30 people and loving that whole environment. But at the same time, on my weekends and in my holidays, I was going from one adventure to the next. So from the Borneo challenge to doing triathlon, which led on to Ironman, cycling from London to Paris in 24 hours, cycling coast to coast across the USA from LA to Miami. I was actually a captain of one of the two teams that raced neck and neck to do that. And then going on to quitting my job and launching myself out into the world, starting a blog, starting a Twitter account right at the beginning, early 2013, when that was all starting to kick off. And then moving to the mountains in Chamonix, which was my dream. I want to live in the mountains, I want to be part of this environment. And doing something that really put me on the map, which was this Alpine Coast to Coast expedition, which I came up with. No one else in the whole world has done it. And it was to climb the highest mountains in the 8 Alpine countries and cycle between them. And that took me 32 days. And I was fortunate to get sponsored by Adidas at that time. They sent out a film crew. And it really just it put me on the map in a way that people were like, oh, she was sitting in this office job a few months ago. She was talking about doing all of this stuff, but now she's gone and done it. And it just gave me this opportunity, this platform to start talking about this concept of challenging yourself and how powerful it can be. And I was just openly sharing my journey and just saying to the world, guys, I want to break down the barriers so that you can find your own version of extraordinary too, because I feel like I've managed to, or I'm on the journey of finding out mine, and this is how I've done it. And I believe that each and every one of us has this incredible power and resilience and strength within us that is actually just currently untapped. And so that's why I've kind of dedicated the last 10 plus years of my life to championing in the world.
Well, what a story. Thank you for sharing. So there's a lot there. I've been taking notes because I want to ask you a few questions on that. So I guess for the audience, if we zoom out a bit, you went from having a corporate job in London to do an adventure race in Borneo. How many days was this challenge in Borneo? The
Borneo challenge was 10 days.
10 days. So I'm assuming you're hiking, you're cycling, maybe horseback. I mean, one of these typical types of things, and then you end up at the peak of a mountain, and then you have to come down.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't stay there, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of an athlete were you before you jumped into doing this? I mean, were you one of these people that was athletic and, you did sports in high school and college? Or was this just something you just happened to want to do one day when you woke up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was not athletic or sporty. I used to do sport a lot when I was younger and not so much at university. But I was like, my school that I went to, we were like the epitome of it's not the winning that counts, it's the taking part. Because we used to lose at absolutely everything. We went to school in central London. We just had really bad facilities, and I was just always that person that was like there on the front line at the beginning, just with all of this, this kind of like energy and potential of thinking like, oh, maybe I could, And then my body just seemed to kind of like fail me quite a lot. And it took me a long time to kind of get to the point of actually figuring out how to push myself and find something that was really me. And I think that was the thing as well, is that at school, a lot of the sports that you do as a girl, like, they're not sports that I do now. They're not part of my life. And I had no idea that actually sport could be adventure. It could be cycling my bike from country to country. It could be doing obstacle course, racing, which I love, like getting muddy and jumping over obstacles and all the camaraderie that comes with that. So it has just been this like phenomenal journey. And the moment that when I started to get fit before the Borneo Challenge, I did this thing called British Military Fitness, which is essentially boot camp, military style boot camp in London's parks. And I loved it. And I would go there in the morning before I went to work. And it felt like this part of my life where every single time I went, I could go further and further and like push deeper and deeper. And that limit of where your body starts to say, oh no, I can't push any further. That was really inspiring me, because it made me feel like, oh, I can just put more and more effort into this and I can keep growing. And yeah, so it has been this phenomenal journey of then learning how to cycle and doing triathlon, learning how to climb mountains. But all of that whole adventure side of it, and everyone I've learned and everything that all the people I've met has just been, such a huge part of my journey.
How long did you have to prepare in this British military fitness before you felt that you were ready? I mean, you really going into this blind, right? Because you say you're going to go to Borneo for 10 days, right? Have you been to Borneo before? No. All right. So you're basically jumping into the unknown. So I'm assuming you talked to some folks out there in London. It's like, look, I'm doing this. I need to train for this. Where do I start? And you probably met some folks who were familiar with that type of thing. And they said, okay, you got to do this. You got to do that. Here's what you do. But you really don't know until you get there, right? Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that preparation to the unknown. And then what was the unknown like? As you started that first challenge, were there moments where you were like, what the hell am I doing here? Or was it just, you were so prepared, the people you were working with did such a good job that you just went through it and it was fine?
I think that I tend to throw myself in at the deep end a lot, and I like it that way. And I have no problem doing things where I don't know people or doing things that other people aren't doing. And I'm sure I probably did do a bit of research and speak to the people. So the people who ran the challenge, they were also running the British military fitness thing. So I do remember at some points they were talking about levels of fitness and stuff like that. But I think I trained for like maybe 6 months or something, and then did the park sessions. And I found, we did a whole bunch of different sports on the challenge, but mainly it was endurance. And so that's what from the word go, when I started training, was starting to focus on my resilience and my endurance and that mindset. And even things like when you're going to the military training and it's wet and it's cold and it's rainy, and you're like doing press ups and burpees in the muddy park with the snow around and stuff like that. Like, all of that is building that physical, mental endurance. And I think for me, it was like I found something that I loved and I just ran with it. And I was just so excited to go out to Borneo. I don't think I was particularly worried about what it was going to be like. I definitely don't remember moments of thinking, what am I doing here, in a bad way? I think I remember thinking, I can't believe I'm here, and that I've made these series of decisions to get myself here and to do something that is just so different from what anybody, in my friendship circle was doing at that time.
Oh, that's great. That's great to know. So when we talk about resilience, depending on who you talk to, there's different definitions for it. One definition that I like, and I believe it was Joe Tessena, the creator of Spartan Racing, and he told me that it's the ability to keep going when you feel like you can't, within reason, of course, because, if you're injured, of course, you also have to learn when to stop, right? Mm. And that resonates a lot with the folks that I've talked to in this space. But that's not just with physicality, right? You got to a point, so you go to Borneo, you come back, you basically still in your corporate environment for a while after that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume that at some point there was this tug of war inside you where one side you have, should I quit the status quo of the work, that everybody says that I'm supposed to do? You're supposed to work, make money, save money, and retire someday. Or should I jump headfirst into this thing that I'm doing on the weekends only and make this my life? I mean, that in itself is a jump that requires, a leap of faith. It requires confidence. It requires mental resilience on taking that jump and then sticking to the plan, creating the plan, modifying the plan, updating the plan, and then executing the plan. Tell us a little bit more about that shift and how was that for you, going from having a safety net of corporate environment versus going pretty much on your own.
Yeah, I love that. It always takes me back to that feeling, which was a very visceral feeling, because when I first quit my job, so I think the thing is, I always knew that what I was doing in this sort of office, corporate London rat race environment, it wasn't me and it wasn't my full story. But I got so into it, and I had, I was in an incredible business and I had incredible opportunities, that I just kept going until it didn't feel right. And then when it started to not feel right, then that's when I started to think, maybe this is the time. And like you said, it was just, terrifying to walk away from great job, company that was really going places. It was literally the fastest growing tech startup in the UK at that time. I'd also built the company culture into one of the best companies in the UK to work for. I had share options that I had to give up when I left. So there was that promise of lots of money that had been, dangled in front of me for years. But I just thought, now's the time. I was 27. I had saved up the money to buy the mortgage. So I had some money saved up, but I hadn't bought the house yet. And, but it was just absolutely terrifying when I first actually found myself living in my life with no routine, no structure, no momentum, no purpose, no boss, no money coming in, nothing. It is just life is very quiet when you don't have those things, just absolutely nothing. And you have to build it step by step by step. Like you said, every single day, taking this vision, starting to put myself out there, starting to frame something around it. So I did quite a few things. I firstly started doing consulting work to earn some money, for startups, because that was my background. I thought I need to earn money and start getting some money in. So I'll do that. And that will be consulting. So it'll be a couple of days a week, which will give me time to see what this sort of challenge Sophie, this whole vision could become. And then I just started to build both, and I started to look to the world for inspiration. And I looked at all these people who were doing these phenomenal things around the world, and I broke it down, and I was like, what they did is they had an idea and they started and they continued. And that's the resilience that you're talking about. And for me, it's not just sheer continuing when you can't go on, because sometimes roadblocks are in our way for a reason. But for me, resilience is about bringing yourself back to baseline when things knock you off course. It's the global pandemic was a huge resilience test for all of us. My business stopped overnight. Everything, because everything I do and did at the time was to do with people and places. I'm resilient, but I use my resilience to retrain during that time and to focus on other areas of my business that haven't had a chance. And now I'm a mindset coach, and I get to do that all around the world, which I absolutely love. So for me, resilience is that, bringing yourself back to baseline, and then having that confidence and having that courage to believe in yourself and to take those risks, even when life is kind of sending you off course or sending you challenges or these curveballs that can constantly come. I think it's been a wild journey. It's definitely been challenging. It's been so many times when I've just had to just keep on going and keep on believing and reinvent myself, pick myself back up, develop new strings to my bow. I think that's the thing. A lot of people in my space, they might want to do adventures and then they want to make a living being a sponsored athlete. But for me, that was never the purpose. It was always what's the mission here? What's the vision? And if I am working with brands being sponsored, what's the alignment between the two of us that we can work on together to create the impact that we want to create? But not just saying, oh, I'm someone who wants to climb mountains and cycle my bike and get paid to do it. So yeah, I think a lot of things in there. And like you said, just always reinventing, always kind of adapting and adjusting, and being a trailblazer in my line of work, and wanting to, to kind of like really, to just do things differently, basically.
No, thank you for sharing that. Before we move away from this topic and get more into the challenges you've done and your philosophy of life, because I want to tap on that a little bit more. You mentioned something earlier about no one likes their job. And unfortunately, that is a lot more true than we would like to admit. As you go through this process, I'm sure you have people telling you, what are you doing? And anytime someone takes a leap like that, whether it's like the one you took, or even changing industries, like I've changed industries a handful of times in my career. And I remember people telling me, you got decades of experience doing this, and now you're going to start from zero doing that. You get a lot of that feedback. You also get positive feedback. I don't want to make it seem like, nobody out there supports, but it's really difficult for people to support individuals that are taking such a big leap of faith, even when they're trying to. I mean, people are intending the right things. They love you. They want to support you, but logic says, I can't support this. What are you doing? How was that experience for you? And did you find people that really kind of tried to keep you from potentially making a mistake, at least in their eyes? And did you have people that were, just go? And are they still, in your bandwagon as you're living your life now?
It's a great question. I love it. Firstly, I would just want to caveat that I'm not making a bold claim that everyone hates their jobs, because that's not what I'm saying. And also, I don't think that we should all love our jobs. But I'm saying that it is possible if you've got, and when I first had those thoughts, I was in my early 20s. It's right at the beginning of my career, when you get to really make these decisions. Obviously, you can make these decisions at any time of your life, but the earlier on you are, the less you have to sacrifice. And so that's when it was really important to me to start thinking about these things. In terms of other people's kind of feedback and stuff, I was absolutely petrified by that as well, because I worked so hard to build myself up in this startup career space. And then it felt like I was just literally just kind of jumping onto something completely different that I had no guarantees about at all. It was a huge leap of faith. And also I didn't even know what the path was. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to go here and do that. So that was the one thing I got. Everyone was like, well, what's your plan? And I was like, I don't have a plan, but my plan is to figure out my plan. And, I think some people were freaked out. They were sort of, wanting me to, shouldn't you buy a house first? Shouldn't you pay off your mortgage? Shouldn't you do these things? Why would you leave such a great company that's got so many opportunities? But I think once I started to talk to them about how I really felt, they knew there was no stopping me. And people have said, I get this look in my eyes, and I guess it's just sheer determination and just kind of like belief in myself, and just like, it doesn't matter whether it works out or not, because the point for me is not, I know it sounds cheesy, but it's not the end destination. It is being that person. That for me is success. Did I take risks? Did I live my life in a bold, courageous way? Did I figure out how to be confident in a world that's constantly telling me who I should be, how I should act, how I should look, how I should live my life? Have I blazed my own trail in the noise of all of that? Have I been resilient in the face of the storms that life has sent me? That is success to me. That is who I've always wanted to be ever since I was literally a child. And for me, all the other stuff like money and adventure and titles and career, and those are my vehicles to this transformational experience of being a human being, that I think is what we all got put on this planet to do.
I welcome that clarification. Yeah, I also agree with you. We're not saying here that people hate their jobs, but I think a job can be a vehicle to numb this fire that all of us have inside. You had your fire. You found a way to find that fire, and then you took the chances, right? Like you said, you blazed your own trail, but not just because. You just did it because there was this fire inside you. And we live in a society today that, for better or for worse, tends to numb that in many of us. And, I know people personally who wake up one day and they're my age, 52, and they don't know what they've been doing this whole time. And and they didn't hate what they did in the past. They were unconscious or unaware, and now they want to go do something, and then they make a change similar to yours, which I think is great. So I think, if anything, well, along the long list of things that people could take from your experiences is we all have a fire inside. We should look to find it and do something about it, because there's something to be said about fanning that type of fire inside. It can only lead to great things if you have a plan, if you surround yourself with people who are going to help you get there, because you have to have a team. No one is self-made. I'm sure you have your team of supporters that have supported you and continue to support you through this path. But that in itself is resilience of, I feel something inside of me. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's right, but I know I need to go seeking for something. And being that seeker is quite a powerful way of living life, at least in my book. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I want to just go back to what you said about people kind of their opinions when you're taking a big risk in life. And I think that often, as you said, and I also want to kind of preface that, we're all at different stages of our lives. And I was 27. I had money saved up. I had been very privileged to have a great education. I had no kids. I literally had nothing holding me back. But that's exactly why I made that decision at the time, before I did have things holding me back, or kind of more commitments. But I think that often what can happen when we change and we make, we make big decisions, or we just grow or change in any way, is that illuminates perhaps the fire that somebody else has squished in their own life for whatever reason they've done that for, whether that is, like I said, commitments, or kind of like your living situation, or whatever it is, or just your self-belief. So yeah, I think that's kind of what can happen there. And for me, I've just always just wanted to go out there and just do the best thing that I thought was right for me, and not, and obviously support other people on their journey if and when they're ready to tap into that. But sometimes what I found as well is that we like to think that we're on this, this linear path to success, fulfillment, happiness, whatever you want to call it. But actually, when I have taken those, what felt like either a step sideways or a step backwards, it's actually given me the opportunity to leap ahead anyway. And I've also found that when you are committed to exploring, life and all these different avenues, that eventually all the paths converge into one. So I've massively used, for example, my experience working in the startup world with business development. It's been hugely instrumental to me in forging relationships with brands like Adidas and Kellogg's, and differentiating myself to other people in my space who don't have that experience. So all of it kind of comes together in the end, even if you are worried and you think, oh gosh, does this feel like a sideways jump, or am I leaving behind everything that I've worked so hard to build? I really believe that it all comes together.
I like how you said that. I know I've told my kids the analogy, at least here in the United States, there are very, very few cities you can drive to and from in one single highway. Usually you got to take a highway or a motorway, as you guys call it, and then change into a different one that may be going west. Where you're going is north, but this particular highway is going west. And it seems like you're going off course, but it's taking you to another highway that then you exit into, and that takes you north, right? So I like how you brought that all together, because what I'm basically getting from you, which I tend to agree, actually, I fully agree, is everything in your life builds upon itself. You know, your experience in those years being in corporate America has become very useful, not only for you into attaining the goals that you're attaining today, but then as a mindset coach, helping others attain their goals. So let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about the tough times.
Mm-hmm.
So you come back, you know, from Borneo. You eventually decide to leave your career and go straight on. There's a mental challenge there and a planning challenge there. But then you get going and you start doing more and more adventure type activities. What was the toughest time for you as you started doing more of these races and more challenges and kind of raising your own bar? Mm-hmm. Talk to us about some difficult times where you had to dig or pull from somewhere in order to complete the goals that you had set for yourself.
Oh, some tough times. Many. I think so. When I was on my Alpine Coast to Coast expedition, which I mentioned at the beginning, was to climb the highest mountains in the Alps and then cycle between them. One of the reasons I set myself that challenge was because I wanted to put myself in a situation over and over again where I didn't have I was at rock bottom basically. And I wanted to see what it felt like to pursue, to keep going, to find the motivation or the drive or the energy to just keep going. Because that's how I thought, this is how I'm going to build those tools to be able to do that. And I thought, you know, if I can't do that when I'm like cycling through the Alps, okay, it might be raining, it might be thunderstorming, whatever, but those aren't really comparable to real life challenges that I'm potentially going to face. So yeah, for me, adventure is this great way of actually facing adversity and training ourselves to be able to cope with adversity, and finding out who you are when you are faced with adversity is, in my opinion, the most powerful and valuable thing that we can do, because we're all going to face that at different points in our lives, and we're going to have to call on that part of ourselves. And when it happens to me outside of adventure, when it happens to me for professional, personal reasons, then I call on that part of myself, and it's like, okay, I really wish I wasn't here right now, but I am. So we know the drill. We've got this. We cycled through those countries, climbed those mountains, done the Ironmans. You know, we've been through lots of stuff in our life before, so let's go. I think entrepreneurially, I had the years between sort of 2015 and 2019 were just absolutely nonstop. And I was like at the crest of this wave of sort of what is now like influencer marketing, especially being a creator, being a storyteller in the space of outdoor and adventure sports, being a woman in that space. So if I could have like cloned myself 3 times, I would have still had, more than enough opportunities to go for. And because a lot of that was, everything that I was doing was very physically and emotionally, mentally draining. So I was going from like doing a challenge, like 24 hours of Tough Mudder in Vegas, to then flying back. And then 2 days later, I'd be on a stage somewhere giving a talk, and then doing all my social media in between that. I was building events, like taking people cycling from London to Paris in 24 hours. I was building TrailBlazers, which is my youth empowerment project to build confidence and courage in teenage girls who are struggling with mental health. And I was just doing all of this stuff, and I was loving it so much. But it absolutely took a lot from me. And it meant that a lot of my personal life kind of had to go on hold. And I think that's the thing in life, is that everything comes at a cost. And now I think that to myself, I think we had some conversations when I was in Lake Nona about me now being able to differentiate my value and my identity and my self-worth from, what I'm achieving, what I have achieved in the world, or the things that people might think of like as successful as things I have done. because for me, that isn't the whole picture. And I now see everything as like the first thing that I'm going to think of is, oh, but at what cost? And it's amazing to have these dreams and these aspirations to want to change the world and build all of these fantastic different ventures. But it absolutely takes things out of you and away from you. And so now I'm at this place where I can build my future, but very clearly knowing like I don't want to make the kind of sacrifices that I've done before.
Well, that in itself is a lesson, for all of us, right? The idea that we have to sacrifice everything always is something that is pretty alive and well in some circles, and I agree with you. It's there's got to be some balance. Obviously, life comes with sacrifices. Mm-hmm. Life comes with pain in the physical sense or in the mental sense. I remember my friend Charlie, who I mentioned, Charlie Engel, who ran across the Sahara. He has a phrase that he always used and I always reuse in the physical sense, where he says that you have to redefine your relationship with pain, because pain is actually something that helps you grow. Mm-hmm. Very different than injury, right? So on the physical side, you got to be able to learn the difference between pain and injury, because one you can push through, the other one you have to tell yourself to stop and try again later, right? But that same analogy applies in the rest of your life, and how do you manage your business, family life, friends, the community, how to go about telling the difference between when to keep going and when to stop and reevaluate. And I like how you've set this up, because we've talked about, your challenges, how you got started, but we've also talked about how you are doing other things to give back. You're saying you're a mindset coach. You have a program for teenage girls. Let's talk about a little bit of that for a moment. What drove you to create, in particular, this program for teenage girls, and how is that coming along?
Well, I feel as though, and you probably gained this from everything I've said so far, but that everything that I learned about how to navigate the world and this experience that we're all having as human beings, I learned after education, after school. I learned by putting myself out there into the world, and so I feel like the education funnels people into a certain, it's sort of, okay, if you achieve these grades, then you'll be able to go off and achieve what you want with your life. But for me, if you're not confident in who you are, you're never going to be able to put yourself out there into the world, and you're never going to be able to, rise the storms and be resilient. So essentially, I wanted to go back and I wanted to give back to girls that perhaps don't have the same kind of support network that I had at home, or opportunities, and just give them those tools and that opportunity to be in a place and be in an environment, to feel that love and support that they don't have, and to be able to figure out who they are without that sea of noise around them that's constantly telling them, like I said earlier, like who you should be, how you should look. The stuff that's come out of my work with these young girls has just been phenomenal. And they are often described by their teachers as invisible. So they're not necessarily the ones who are causing trouble or failing in their schoolwork or anything like that. They're not missing school. They're just trying to be completely invisible to reduce the amount of attention that gets put on themselves. So they just don't put their hand up or volunteer or participate in anything. They just, the status quo is just like this. Just be as invisible as you can. And to bring them into this environment where we cultivated this environment of trust and safety. And you can't have, trust and connection without vulnerability. So that was really beautiful as well. Like, fostering this environment where they wanted to be vulnerable and they could, and they felt safe to do that. And then the breakthroughs that come from that. And just, even though I've done a lot of extreme things in my life to build and challenge myself, I take a very, very compassionate, kind of like very different approach with other people. I mean, obviously if someone comes to me and they're like, I want to do the biggest thing that I can imagine, 100% I'll support you. But mostly we need to do the small things to start building and compounding that confidence and start taking those steps forward. So yeah, we just, the first time I ever did a workshop with the girls, I was in a complete state of flow. And I don't think at the time I even knew what that meant. But I remember going home afterwards and thinking, for those 2 hours that I was with them, the world did not exist outside that room. I wasn't aware at the time. I wasn't thinking of anything. I was just so in flow state. And it came from inside me. It was like, I'd never had any training of how to work with these girls before, how to deliver a workshop or how to engage people that don't engage at all with anything. It just came from inside me. And I was just, this is what I was born to do. This is what I'm so passionate about. And so from there, I've done a bunch of workshops in schools. I've also taken them on adventure camps, which is just amazing in itself because a lot of these girls have never left London before. We're getting them down to the coast. They're seeing the sea, they're swimming in the sea, they're seeing the sunrise, like just all these beautiful natural things that are accessible, but they've never really been part of it before. And then we also have done some sailing trips, which were phenomenal because I think you know that one of my favorite quotes and the one that inspired me to quit my job was, a ship in the harbor is safe, but it's not what a ship was built for. Go sailing. So I love like bringing them on board the boat and you know, that then creates a very unique environment for change and growth because it's so, you know, it's the word I'm looking for. It's eluded me. You can't escape really. You're on this vessel, you're sailing out into the sea. You know, it's a very unique opportunity for growth. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been up to with Trailblazers. I've also done a few camps in America and the Caribbean and the Bahamas. And we're looking to grow and build that and seeing where the next steps go to.
Well, that is fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. As I told you, this was going to fly. You know, we are out of time. So what I'd like to do is give you an opportunity to say some final things for the audience, things that I'd like to leave the audience with some action, some inspiration, and then maybe where can they find more about you and what you do?
Okay. So some action points. I think for me, it's something that I come back to over and over again is just constantly taking those steps forward. And even if if the path ahead isn't clear or I feel like I'm at roadblocks or I'm in something's happened to create the challenges that I'm currently facing, I just keep taking steps forward. And whether those are looking after myself and investing in my physical and mental well-being or being kind, and putting kindness and like generosity out into the world, or sending a couple of emails or posting something on social media. Like, I always think of it as like these ripple effects that go out into the world. And that's what I always think to myself, just create that momentum, even if you don't know where it's going to go to or where it's going to lead to or how you're going to get to where you want to go to, just create that momentum. And it's those baby steps that end up leading to these big dreams that we all have. So that's the first thing that I would say. And I think when it comes in terms of like resilience and like you said, pain, I've got this sweatshirt that I wear and it says, if you need me, I'll be in the pain cave. And it's a sort of like joke of like, well, that's where you can find me because that's where the magic happens, So I love what you said before from Charlie about reimagining our relationship with pain. And I couldn't agree more. And when we're in these challenging, like I said, for me, facing adversity is the most powerful and valuable experience that I've ever put in front of myself. You find out just phenomenal things about yourself, and you find out that most of the things that you're afraid of, they're not really real, and you can overcome them. And I think then the last thing that I would say, because I know you love 3 thoughts on, is just to have fun. Just to remember that that's what we came here to do, is to explore and be creative and curious. And I think that whole flow state is like getting out of your own way to actually create optimum experiences and optimum performance. And for me, it's like, just buckle up for the ride and enjoy the journey. And I think the more that I do that, the more that I loosen my hold on knowing, which is so hard, the more that I can sit with the uncertainty and trust and surrender to it and just control the controllables, which is how am I being every day? What am I doing every day? And what am I putting out into the world? The more that the world brings so much abundance and joy and opportunity and adventure and things that I could never conceive in a million years.
That's fantastic. Where can people find more about you?
You can find me, I'm on all social media channels as Challenge Sophie. My website is exactly the same, challengesophie.com. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. My name is Sophie Storm Roberts. And I always love hearing from people who've listened to podcasts. So feel free to reach out. It'd be fantastic to hear from you. And if anybody wants to find out about any of the different avenues of my work, then I'd love to hear from you as well.
Well, Sophie, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for making the time for me. This has been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Love the energy that you bring to what you do. It is evident that is driven by passion and not by achievement. We had that conversation when you were here. I think that puts you in a category that's very unique, as there's a lot of folks that they're looking for the achievement. There is a fire in you that's separated from achievement. So thank you for making the time. And I guess we'll be talking soon.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.